I just love that tune. Peter Trulin, if you're listening, thank you so much for sending us that bumper music. It's been a great part of the Rec Poker podcast over the years. And speaking of the Rec Poker podcast out over the years, we've got a bit of a special episode for you tonight, folks. This is episode 600 of the Rec Poker podcast. Oh my God. 600. That's even more than 500. I am so pleased to be joined by several members of the Wrecking Crew here tonight. Feels like a momentous occasion. I cannot believe it has been 599 episodes before this one of the Rec Poker podcast. But yeah, I just have to say it like I do every week. I have the best freaking job in the world. I am so grateful and honored to be a part of this crew that we have here, the Wrecking Crew, some of my favorite people in the world. And I just am, I'm speechless. I'm getting a little emotional thinking about 600 episodes of the Rec Poker podcast with so many fantastic folks here. So let's get on with it. This is the forums edition of the show. We're going to be talking about some of the tips that have kind of helped us out in our poker game that we've either learned on the podcast or talking with other Wrecking Crew members, or that people have told us made a big difference to them in their game. We're just going to kind of go around the horn here a little bit and talk about some of the things that we have learned on the Rec Poker podcast over the last 599 freaking episodes. So let's get to it. My name's Jim Reed. I'm Bluff Storini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter. It's my privilege to be hosting the show here on Monday nights. I must thank the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. That is a lot of episodes for them to be the official sponsor of the Rec Poker podcast. And if you want to find out more about the great folks at Running Aces, you can go to runaces.com. We're always looking forward to doing more events over there and meeting some more of the fun, friendly faces just north of the Twin Cities in the beautiful state of Minnesota. So I have to thank them. I have to thank our premium members, because most of what we do at Rec Poker is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization. So the support of our premium members makes a world of difference to us. Chipping in $15 a month doesn't sound like a lot, but it really helps us out in a big way. And we really rely on your support. And thank you all for all your support over the years, all the premium members, all the kind words that have been sent in by community members. It's great to be here and to be a part of this fantastic organization. So come sign up, get a free account today at Rec Poker. All it takes is an email address and a smile, although we do insist on both. And if you want to take your game to the next level, you can join our premium membership. You can get you'll always be able to get your first month for only $5 by using the code Rec Poker at checkout. And you can join some of these fantastic folks like you're about to meet tonight. You get used to hearing my voice on the show, but I am just one man, and it takes a group, a gang, a crew to make the magic happen here at Rec Poker. We call this group of wizards the Wrecking Crew. And if you want to find out more about me and the rest of the Wrecking Crew, just head on over to rec.poker/crew, or you can listen up. You're going to meet a few of them right here tonight on the air.
600 episodes. That's truly amazing. I'm excited to be part of it. I'm Kim Kilroy. I am Fergie56 in the home game, PetVet or PetVet33 on the most social platforms. And if you'd like to hear more from me, I have a hand history review group that meets once a month on the second Wednesday.
And I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, you can join me and a bunch of our premium members as we discuss the latest books on poker.
And I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_Moss, or as Gopher Boy TJM in the Rec Poker home game, which we stream live on Twitch every Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/RecPoker.
And if you're listening to this, and I've done my math right, if you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, it should be July 2nd. So it's a holiday weekend for our American and Canadian listeners. Just another way that the Rec Poker podcast is bringing people together all around the world. Borders mean nothing to us here. We're all just poker fans. One of the perks of being a premium member here at Rec Poker is that aside from all the study groups, the book study, all our coaching sessions, the play and hangs, all the great deals and prizes that you get as a Rec Poker Premium member. You also get to come and join the forums edition of the podcast every week, and we love it when you do. So we're joined by Joe Millay, who I'm pleased to welcome back into the Zoom room for the forums edition. Joe, introduce yourself to Rec Poker Nation, and congratulations on being here for episode 600.
Thank you. Congratulations to you guys on episode 600. My name is Joe Millay. I'm JM Atapi or JM Tape in the home game, and hope to see you guys there. Thanks.
Right on. So yeah, so we're going to talk, like I say, just a little bit about some of the epiphanies that we've had, some of the tips that we've heard on the show from other members, or some of the ones that we've gotten some feedback from other members that it helped them with their game. I'll kick it off. I mean, when I joined Rec Poker back in 2019 as a premium member, you know, Taylor and Rob were already regulars on the podcast at that point, and I sat in on some training sessions that we were just sort of figuring out how to do a premium membership and like what a website looked like and how to run the calendar and all that kind of stuff. But I had a lot of room to grow as a poker player when I got started with Rec Poker. I think for me, one of the first things was honestly just how to effectively range opponents. I had been playing, you know, my hand against what I thought my opponent might have. I think I'd gotten to the point of kind of playing my hand against my opponent's range a little bit, but being able to really think about what's my range here, what's my opponent thinking my range is, all the assumptions that go into player types and range building. Hearing folks like everyone here on the show, and Chris Jones and John Somsky, and some of those other great OGs in those study groups talking about the assumptions they were making about other players. I guess that was one thing that really helped me out, because I learned mostly in a vacuum, listening to podcasts and watching videos and studying on my own. But I had a hard time kind of challenging my own assumptions about how other people play, and I would just project on them the way that I play, which is really a silly thing to do. So one thing for me was really just asking those kind of questions. What do I know about this player? What hands have I seen them take to showdown? How can I build their range more effectively? And what kind of assumptions are they making about my range? It definitely turned me into a much savvier player. Another one for me was that poker is about winning chips, not hands. I came in, I just want to win every hand. I wanted to win every hand. And I would get into these spots where it's like, well, my only chance to win this hand is to make some huge bluff. And so I would do it, and it would not go well. But that concept that it's actually okay to not win hands. And it's actually important to know that you're not going to win hands, and to lose a small pot over losing a big pot. That lesson that those chips that you keep, those chips that you don't spew off, are just as valuable, more valuable, in fact, than chips that you win from your opponents. So a penny saved is a penny earned. That was a big one for me, and really not trying to just win every hand. Controlled aggression was good information for Mr. Bluffsterini back in the day. Taylor, what about you?
Yeah, I think the one thing that has helped a bunch over the years is essentially saying to myself, so what if I get raised? Specifically like on the river, because I think so often like you failed to go for thin value bets on the river because you're like, but what if I get raised? So what? If you get raised, you're probably beat. And what would you rather do? Check and then let your opponent set the bet size? So what if you get raised? So you got to kind of get rid of some of those like fear components that like go in there. That's like, oh man, like, you know, I don't want to bet into a hand that's better than mine. I don't want to bet into a hand that's going to end up raising me. Like, how often are your opponents, you know, raising as bluffs on the river? It's really not all that often. So you kind of have to like break some of those like worries of like, so what if I get raised? It's not just the river too. It's like with a 3-bet. Oh, well, you know, I think our last episode that we did last week, we were talking about like ace five suited and using it as a bluff. And it's like, well, what if you get raised? So what? So what if you get raised? You just fold the hand, you move on. And kind of understanding that and realizing like part of poker is having hands where you're going to put chips into the middle, trying to bluff, trying to get your opponent to call with the worst hand. They may have a better hand, and then when they raise you, you just have to fold. And that's just a correct play. And like you got to get used to like those lines of thinking. So I think that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two. One I'm still working on, and that is learning to fold big hands. And it kind of carries on from what Taylor is saying. When the story that's being told at the table is telling you that your aces are probably beat, then your aces are probably beat, and you just have to fold them. And I find it really, really difficult to do. And it's something that I'm still working on and still trying to do. And I think Doyle Brunson said that he felt that his poker game got really good when he learned to fold. And
I love that.
it's just a really tough part of the game, especially when we have a sort of a sense of entitlement when you look down and you see your aces, that you're going to win, entitled to win this hand. And to just sit back, listen to the story that's being told at the table, and be able to fold them when it looks like you're beat. Sometimes you'll get bluffed off your hand, but most of the time, if somebody's making a big bet on the river, your aces are probably beat, like Taylor says. So that's one of the things that I'm learning, is trying to fold, that I've learned having reinforced here through Rec Poker, is to learn to fold big hands. Still a work in progress. The other one is one that I've mentioned on a number of podcasts. It's one that's helped my PFFs immensely to win big hands, and that's a live poker tell at the table. And when somebody makes a big, especially on the river, and you have a value hand of some sort, and somebody makes a big bet, either a raise of your bet or they just make a big bet into you. And the live poker tell first came from Ryan LaPlante, and it's watch your opponent, so often you can't see the pulse. People you can't, especially for me, I'm old, I can't see the other end of the table, but I can see if they're breathing hard. And people will breathe hard and fast, whether they have a really good hand and also when they're bluffing. Well, when they have a really good hand, their excitement calms down after a minute or so. So if you keep watching them and just sort of keep watching them and just wait a minute, 2 minutes, and they're still breathing fast, then it's a good tell if you're on the fence that they're bluffing. And I have called down with fourth pair before and been right. And I've also called when I haven't seen the tell, because I wanted to call, because I had top pair, like whatever, and of course they have a set, but their breathing was normal. So it just went around to prove it. And I've also had people put on a fake heavy breathing.
Oh.
And that's something that you can sort of pick up on pretty easily when someone's forcing their chest to go up and down, like they're really nervous. So you just have to be careful of that. It's more when they're trying to hide it, but you can see that they're breathing quickly. So
I love that.
That
one.
has been really, really, really good as a live tell for me.
Yeah, hat tip to Ryan LaPlante. I remember that one. And yeah, you've mentioned that before, and you've found that to be very, very reliable. I like that. Another one of mine that you just reminded me of, Kim, is that it's okay to be bluffed. It's actually okay to be bluffed. Like, it's okay to lose hands, and it's actually okay to lose hands even when you have the best hand. There's going to be players out there that are maniacs, that are bluffing more than they should. And against those players, when you know that about them, you should lace up and call down lighter than you would against other players. But most players, especially most players that we're playing against in our games, are not bluffing enough. And if they are bluffing occasionally, they're just not bluffing enough. It's not like they never bluff, but even if they don't bluff, even if they bluff occasionally but not enough, you can still fold. You can still fold and get bluffed. It's okay to get bluffed. I just wish I had, I wish I had internalized that one earlier, because it's this sort of like poker as a competition. You don't want to get beat. You don't want them to like get one over on you. But part of being a successful poker player is getting bluffed sometimes, bluffing sometimes, getting bluffed sometimes. It is part of the game. And if you have, if you're never folding to bluffs, then you're, or if you're, what am I trying to say? If you're never getting bluffed, you're out of line yourself on one part of this for sure. Rob, what's on your mind?
Well, if you're not being bluffed, you're not folding enough. That's what you're trying to say.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's right. That's right.
If you're never bluffed, that means you're not folding enough. So, a couple things that I've, since I've been in rec poker and since we started this podcast, I don't know, what was it, 25 years ago now?
It feels like yeah.
I was never really aware of my pre-flop strategy. I never really thought much of it. And then when we first started getting together, first started talking, one of the first things we started talking about was, what's your pre-flop range? And I'm going, well, that's a good question. What is my pre-flop range? And so we started working together. I know Taylor was part of this, and Chris and John and everybody. We were working on, okay, what is our pre-flop range? What does it look like? And then developing those pre-flop ranges, and then looking at the specific positions and how your pre-flop range changes with position. And then when we start talking about tournaments, how it changes with the size of your stack and position. And those were all concepts that, I'd been playing for quite a long time, and I was just, whatever I did, I just did. I didn't really think too much about what was right, what was wrong. It was just what felt right to me at the time. I was playing with instinct. And so developing a really good pre-flop strategy, I think, is probably the number one thing that a rec poker player can do to improve immediately. Because when you go into post-flop situations, having a very solid pre-flop range, you're going to find yourself in less troubling spots than you will if you're just willy-nilly throwing in chips anytime you feel like it. So that was the number one thing I think that I really started getting my hands around as part of rec poker.
Can I add into that? Because I think that's incredibly important. Like pre-flop, you play 100% of your hands pre-flop, and you gotta kind of know what your decisions are there. I've had people come up to ask me, and they're like, "Hey, like when you're studying, what do you look at? Like, do you even study pre-flop anymore?" And it's like, yeah, like I have to stay on top of my pre-flop game. Like it may seem like the simplest thing to do, but like there's a ton there. Like, what times are you 3-betting ace jack suited, and which times are you 3-betting ace jack offsuit? And what are the better situations for each one of those things? Like it's not just like super intuitive to like know all those pieces. You got to like go through and like study those different spots, but it's so important. It sets the framework for the rest of the hand. So I just wanted to throw a +1 in there quick to Rob's comment, because I do think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, and we have talked before, I think it even came up last week, about how players that play very wide pre-flop ranges, they get to flops with very wide ranges, and then they get, you get post-flop with wide ranges. That means that you have a lot of very weak hands in those ranges, and they have to go somewhere. So they're either going to fold, or they're going to get you to fold, or they're going to get to showdown. So there's this knock-on effect to starting with properly tight pre-flop ranges. That means that, as Rob was saying, you get post-flop, now you have less garbage in your range. You have fewer hands that you have to fold on flops, turns, and rivers. So you're more profitable post-flop. So that pre-flop discipline is crucial. And I can't overemphasize that enough. When we talk to guests on the chats edition of the podcast about common mistakes that recreational players make, playing too many hands pre-flop is a constant answer there. So it affects multiple streets. Another one for me was in the book study that Rob was running in Andrew Brokos's Play Optimal Poker. It was the first time there's a toy game exercise there with the Ace King Queen game, and it was the first time that it really hit home to me the difference between playing a polarized range or a condensed portion of your range. And basically what it means is that if your opponent is playing a polarized range, if they could be very high in their value range or bluffing, you don't want to raise. You don't want to reopen the action into them. You're allowing them to play perfectly. If you do, they're going to continue with all the hands that beat you, and they're going to fold all the hands that you beat. So when you yourself are in the kind of the middle of your range, in that condensed portion of your range, and your opponent it has a polarized range, you tend to want to take the passive action of calling to keep their bluffs and their value hands in their range. If you make an aggressive action and raise instead, you allow them to play perfectly, and that's something we're always trying to avoid doing. That was one that I got a hat tip for that one. Yeah, right.
I think as part of that is not only do you not want to raise, you don't want to bet into them either with your condensed range, because then you're giving them the opportunity to raise you. So in that toy game, they talked about if you had the kings, if you had the pocket kings and the other guy had either pocket aces or an ace or a queen, and you have a king, that's one card, you're never supposed to bet that king from out of position. Or actually, you're never supposed to bet that king, period, even if you're in position, because he can respond exactly perfectly to your bet. Whereas he has an opportunity to bet with his bluffs, and you have an opportunity to bluff catch then with your king when he bets his queen. So yeah, being in that condensed range, you always take the passive option of either folding or calling, and you never initiate a bet.
And if
in
folks
that
want to
toy
find,
game.
yeah, if folks want to find out more details about that toy game, you can pick up Andrew Brokos's Play Optimal Poker. If you're a Rec Poker Premium member, you can try it out this month for only $5. You can go back into the archive of all the book studies that Rob's done, and we record all of those, and Rob makes these fantastic slides breaking down the concepts in the book, so you can find a lot more details about that. But that one really helped me visualize how to play a lot of these spots post flop in particular, where I was making mistakes because I didn't appreciate that difference. That was a good one.
Another thing that I learned since joining Rec Poker, I used to be very pissed off whenever Kim mentioned it before, you have this feeling that you should win. You're entitled to win. You got those aces, or you got that ace king, whatever it is, you're entitled to win. So then when you go all in with your ace king and somebody calls you with ace jack and they spike a jack, back in the day, I would be like, how could this happen? This is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I'm mad. Because how could he call me with ace jack? I had ace king, for God's sakes. And then you have to sit back and realize that this is a math game, right? And if he asked you before he called, if he should call with his ace jack, what would you say to him? You're sitting there with ace king. He's saying, should I call with ace jack? I would jump all over and say, yes, please. So keeping in mind that this is a game of math and you want to put yourself into the best position you can. And just because the cards don't work out for you doesn't mean you made a mistake. So keep that in mind. And that was a huge lesson for me. For one thing, my blood pressure was lowered so much. And I didn't have to worry about high blood pressure anymore when I played poker. You didn't hear me yelling. I didn't throw my mouse anymore. There was a lot of advantages to understanding that concept.
There you go. And those are the kind of tips that can spill into your real life too, away from the felt. Those are all sorts of benefits that really, really help out. So I love that. One for me was this came up in Chris's deep dives that we've been doing over the years. CBETs. So I didn't appreciate how much less frequently we should be c-betting out of position, because we should be c-betting in position a ton, but I didn't really appreciate how less often we should be c-betting out of position. And when we started breaking down the different board textures, I really did not appreciate the sizing distinctions out there, and how different board textures but allow you to use smaller sizings or bigger sizings to really just to exploit your opponents and the ranges that your opponents are going to bring to the table in various spots like that. Big shout out to Chris Jones, who isn't here tonight for the recording of this episode, but has just put so much fantastic poker learning into the Rec Poker membership generally, but particularly through the deep dives, our structured learning seminar every month. So many good things that we could look back on over the years in that. But particularly for me, flop textures and c-bet sizing, I just took my game to a whole new level from getting involved in Chris Jones's deep dives. Taylor?
Yeah, I think another one that I needed to correct myself with is that you shouldn't use solvers as a solution to an answer key. They're not always an answer key to how hands specifically played out. A solver will tell you how a computer is going to play against a computer in specific spots, but that's not always going to help you unless you're playing someone who is a very well-studied player and is going to play exactly like GTO would say that you should. So especially if you're playing live and you're going back and you're trying to check different spots and you're like, oh yeah, I get to this river and I should call with second pair here. You have to go through and kind of understand the different outputs of the solution that essentially say okay, well, if you're going to call with second pair, it's because your opponent is going to be betting these other things that second pair beats. Are they going to be calling, ace high with just, an ace of the flush suit that's going to be taking a bluff line, or is your opponent going to give up with that specific hand? And you have to kind of go through those mental thoughts to actually think through the outputs to get to what you think that answer would then show up as, because your opponents aren't going to be playing perfectly to that GTO style, which means that the answer is not going to be what was the right answer for that specific situation. So you have to use your brain to think about the different computer solves, but don't use it as just a pure answer sheet.
Yeah, and also that, as you were saying, Taylor, is sort of you learn where to deviate from with those, but we're not playing against GTO players, so that's a tough one for me too, because I'm a fancy play syndrome guy for sure. And I really credit this group, Rob in particular, for helping me kind of think, well, Jim, you're not playing against yourself. You're also not playing against some bot GTO program. Tailor your play to this person that you're actually in the hand with. And GTO is a great place to study, but not a great way to play. That was a good one for me. Another one for me was I was a total ICM donkey before I got to Rec Poker, and I'm still not great at the ICM stuff. Let's be honest; those chips just find their way into the middle of the table of their own accord sometimes. I swear, I don't even touch them. But Rob, working with, I don't remember which book this one came through, Rob. You'll be able to help me out. I think it was one of Dara and Barry's, but the idea that
Endgame Poker Strategy, the
you-
ICM book.
That's it. That's it. I knew it was one of those. The idea that you just sort of like slide down all your actions, you just sort of demote your actions. Big bets in a typical situation, in a chip EV situation, big bets are great. When you get to ICM, if you would normally make a big bet, now you make a small bet. If you normally would raise, now you call. If you normally would call, now you fold. Everything just kind of slides down one step when ICM comes into play. And I'm sure there's some counterfactuals to that. Like I'm sure it's not strictly true in every case, but that way of thinking about it really helped me kind of just put the brakes on a little, take my hand off the mouse, as Rob likes to say, and just think like, what am I actually trying to do here? What is important? Is this just a chip EV spot, or do I need to really worry about preserving my tournament life? And so do the other players at the table. So that sort of that way of thinking about ICM was really helpful for me. I've got a couple more, but does anyone else want to Rob?
Yeah, just back at the beginning, we talked about how you're kind of afraid of what your opponent might have, and you would be afraid of them hitting and you didn't, and those types of things. Well, understanding that players miss the flop 60% of the time, at least 60% of the time. I mean, sometimes they might hit certain types of flops a little bit more, but again, it has a lot to do with their pre-flop range construction. So understanding based on how often they're opening, what their range looks like, and then understanding that 60% of the time they're going to miss that flop, just like you are. And in the past, I think when I first started playing, it was like the flop would come out and I go, oh my God, they probably got, trips, they got, they got straights, they got flushes, they got everything. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? So understanding that makes it a lot easier to play a solid strategy. Understanding that the monsters under the bed normally don't exist. And if they're there, your opponent's going to tell you about it pretty quickly. So you're going to find out in a big hurry. Not everybody is slow playing and trapping.
That's right. That's right. Another one for me, just again, getting back to position, just being more selective with my bluffing out of position. Don't tell anyone, folks, but I actually don't bluff out of position nearly as much as I bluff in position. Pre-flop, semi-bluff, three bets, post-flop, good spots when my opponent's like showing weakness. I tend to take, I used to be way too aggressive out of position. I was just giving too much information away to my opponents and letting them play bigger pots in position. And that really didn't serve me very well. And I think you need to sort of take a look at this stuff in the lab objectively to see how the numbers reflect the truth. Like, if anyone doubts this, just like if you have Poker Tracker 4, look up the stats, filter for hands where you are the one making the 3-bet, and then filter for hands where you are the one calling a 3-bet. And the same hands, pocket tens, 7-8 suited, queen jack offsuit, those same hands are going to be profitable when you're the one making the 3-bet and not profitable when you're the one calling the 3-bet. There's parts of poker that are inherently more profitable and less profitable. Playing in position is one of those that is just inherently more profitable. So I wish I'd learned to just like play fewer small pots out of position or fewer big pots out of position. That would have been a good one for me. And I guess the last one for me, I know it's a little trite, but the importance of finding a community, whatever that means to you. I didn't have any friends. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have friends that I could talk poker with. And the importance of talking poker regularly, how that's good for your brain. Like it's one thing to take information in passively through videos or podcasts or even like worksheets, but when you have to put things into your own words and actually like form a point of view and try and have an actual dialogue with someone, you're going to have to justify your actions. You're going to have to, your assumptions are going to be challenged, and you are going to get to truth a lot faster when you share your problems with other people. It's also like poker is a brutal game, and it's a brutal crucible. You don't know if you're right. You don't know if you're playing well. You're constantly second guessing yourself, especially if you're like an MTT player. Guess what, brother? You're going home broke 85% of the time. Like it's a game of losing. And so having that kind of support from some friends, some peers, some mentors, a community made a huge difference in my poker career, my poker skill. But honestly, I mean, I've made some real friends through Rec Poker, and it's made me a much better poker player. But I honestly think it's also made me like a better citizen, a better critical thinker, a better friend. I really feel like I've benefited a lot from joining a group like this. So I know if you're listening to this, you're interested in getting better. You're a poker enthusiast. There are a lot of ways out there for you to get better, but honestly, it starts by just finding some people to talk to about poker, whoever that is for you. It doesn't have to be Rec Poker, but find some people and just talk poker with them, and that's gonna do wonders for your game. But it's also just gonna do wonders for the enjoyment that you take in your life on and off the felt. Joe, what's on your mind?
So I've been around, I don't know, 3 or 4 months maybe, and only been really immersed in the last couple months. But one of the things I found, not necessarily a specific concept, but well, I mean, not like the book studies, I think are just incredibly valuable. And I looked at the game plan, and there's outlines of the chapters on each section, and there's charts, and it's just a completely, it's it's just like it's just the value of $15 a month is just incredible. And what I learned is this: the I think what I learned from that book study, or just from that book, is that when you're starting out, to keep it simple. I mean, there's so much out there. Like I get so immersed, I get so confused about GTO versus explorative or exploitative, and it's just keep it simple. Read as much as you can, but you just got to keep it. I really liked that book and the book study, the way Rob and the other people approached it. It was very, 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 very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joe. And I think the other thing that it occurs to me that being part of Rec Poker has really reinforced to me is the concept of opportunity cost. That we only have so much time to study, and so being thoughtful and judicious about what we spend our time studying is crucial.
Yeah, good point.
Because there's never been more information available to the poker world, than there is today, with the internet and all the free videos and the books and the podcasts and everything. And it's not all good information. Some of it's not good information. Some of it is good, but just not as good as some of the rest. And every hour that you spend studying some subject A is an hour that you can't spend studying subject B. And if subject B is going to be much more valuable to your ascent as a player, you're actually really shooting yourself in the foot by wasting this time on other things where it's not going to have such a big return on your game as it will on those ones. So that's well said. And again, another shout out to Rob's book studies, because we do a lot of great stuff at Rec Poker, but the book study is one of the longest running programs that we have, and Rob puts a lot of work into those detailed slides every 2 weeks, and I think it's one of the best things we do. Rob, what's on your mind?
Just concerning Rec Poker and a community of people that you can talk to. We've talked to a lot of very successful poker players, and one of the things they always talk about is their tribe, their group, the people that they got together with and shared ideas with. And when you're online and you're looking at videos, a lot of times you're looking at videos from pros who are, they're playing at this level up here. So, I mean, it's entertaining, but how much are you actually learning? Whereas with Rec Poker, we hope to be the type of place where you can come as a beginning player, someone who doesn't have all of the terminology, doesn't have all of the Hendon mob stats, but is just trying to find their way in poker and enjoy themselves in poker without being looked down at like, they're lesser than because they're playing 1 cent, 2 cent on ACR, or they're playing the $30 tournaments or the free rolls at their local casino. That is who we are. That is who we are. That's the people that we are trying to encourage and help and want to be a part of their growth. And I think that's where Rec Poker for me really, really helped me. As you said, Jim, when you have people around you that you can talk to about poker, about strategies, about whatever, it really helps fortify what you're doing and makes you think at a different level yourself. So I think it's very important to be able to do that. And hopefully here at Rec Poker, we're doing that for everybody that wants to, regardless of the level they're at. And if you ever feel like we're talking way above your head, or you want to bring back the concepts to a little more basic level, just let us know. We're going to be more than happy to talk about it.
So, Joe, you unmuted again. Something else you'd like to add?
Well, because I think that's very, very well said. And what you guys, and that's the way it feels. Like when I stumbled upon it. Like Joe Coolis, I was in Andrew Brokas's Thinking Poker Daily,
Right.
his video, and he recommended Rec.Poker, and it's just been so welcoming. And that's where it's like, when you don't, it's just the value for the premium membership is just incredible. You guys are doing a great job.
No, thank you
Well,
so
when
much.
you said-
No, please,
Yeah.
please don't
Well,
please
Rob
don't
said-
stop
well,
saying
Rob
nice
said-
things. I love this. Yeah.
Well, what Rob said is exactly true. It's just people who want to, they don't want to make maybe they don't want to make a bunch of money. They don't necessarily want to go pro. They want to win, but they want to enjoy themselves, and they want to. And one of the things too is that I think is just keeping your. It's a mechanism. Poker is a mechanism to keep your mind sharp as you age, and that's one of the reasons that it got me into it is the math behind it and the strategy. I think it's just this community is just wonderful. I
Folks,
appreciate
we did
everything
not-
you guys do.
We did not pay Joe a
I did
penny
not get paid.
to come on the show
No.
and say these nice things about it. Thank you, Joe. Honestly, it warms my heart to hear it, because that's exactly what we're trying to do, man. And I can tell that you're enjoying it and you bring a lot into the group here. So we're very glad to have you. I think
Thank you.
the one thing I'll leave us with here, unless anyone else wants to jump in, is that there's lots of good reasons to love poker. It's not for everybody, just like any other kinds of gambling or semi-gambling. There's dark places it can take folks, but it is a beautiful game, and it's a beautiful, elegant, wonderful way to keep yourself sharp, to be able to keep competing throughout your entire life, and it's fun. And so it should always be fun. If you, my only rule is, if you're playing poker, you should be either making money or having a hell of a good time. Ideally, both. It would be great if you were doing both. But if you're only having fun and you're not making money, that's actually okay too. And if you're one of those folks that want to go pro and you want to make money and suddenly it's not as fun as it used to be, okay, go with God. Fine, I'm not going to complain about that either. But if you're not having fun and you're not making money, then that is a problem, and you should find another way to spend your time, or you should work with people like us to get better at poker, so that you could at least be less frustrated or more profitable. But it is a very rewarding game, and I would just urge folks, if you are just getting started in poker and it seems intimidatingly large and complex, it is a game that will take a lifetime to master, but you don't need to master it to be a profitable player, and you certainly don't need to master it to enjoy the game. It is very rewarding of the time that you spend working on poker. I find the more I spend studying poker, the more time I spend talking about poker with my friends here on the Wrecking Crew, the more I get out of it. And I've been talking poker for a long time, and I still am learning new things every day. And I guess just to take it back to the top of the episode, I'm just so grateful and really honored, like I say, to have been able to take this place here at Rec Poker, to be able to help facilitate the spreading of the knowledge of the other members of the Wrecking Crew. And I just want to thank everyone, starting with Steve Fredland from the very beginning, who put this whole thing together, and all the Wrecking Crew members, all the core team members that have been supporting it over the years. Those first premium members, those OGs that first got us started, John Barrows and everyone at Running Aces, and just all the guests that came on and helped us out early, particularly when we were still kind of trying to make a name for ourselves. It's crazy to think that now episode number 600 is out there, and now when I talk to people about coming on the Rec Poker podcast, they know who we are. It feels like we're really getting there. So yeah, just again, I'm just touched to be here. I'm so proud of what the rest of this group has put together here, and very grateful to be a part of it. So I guess that's it, folks. Tune in next week for episode 601. This is not the end. This is just the start of another new chapter here at Rec Poker. And on behalf of everyone on the Wrecking Crew, I want to say thanks for listening along. Thanks to the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, Joe Millay, Rob Washam, Kim Kilroy, Taylor Moss, all the Wrecking Crew members who couldn't be here, who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen, Renz and the production team, Roger, Shooty, Michael, Badker, so many fantastic people. We couldn't do it without you, and we couldn't do it without you, the listeners at home. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.